Hey guys, Allison here from Lofty Loops Yarns and Lofty Loops on Instagram. I am bringing you a brand new tutorial video on how I cut in my Afterthought heels. Now I cannot claim this method as my own. I learned from the Kirby Wirby YouTube video, so I definitely highly recommend you check that out. But if you guys are interested in seeing how I complete my Afterthought heels, then go ahead and keep watching. So you'll see here I've knit my sock minus the heel and added a marker where I want the heel to go without waste yarn. That is the biggest part of the Afterthought heel, a true Afterthought. A true Afterthought heel does not include adding waste yarn to your sock. You will actually just knit, bypass the whole heel and place your marker based on the pattern or your measurements of your foot. So I chose the row directly above the row that is marked with the stitch marker and followed it all the way along to the far right side of the underside of the foot. I know from when I knit this that I had 60 stitches for this sock, which means I had 30 stitches on one needle in magic loop and 30 stitches on the other. So that means that I know that I need to pick up 30 stitches along the underside of this for the heel. And speaking of magic loop, I am using a magic loop needle. So this is my 24-inch Chiaogu red lace needle in the size, I believe it's a US 2. It's whatever I use to knit the sock. So you'll definitely want a magic loop needle or a longer circular needle for this. I have used DPNs before, however it does tend to get quite a bit fiddly if you're using DPNs. But if that's your preferred method, then I say go for it. I've just found that using the magic loop method works best for me. So you can see here I've gone along and I've picked up all of my stitches on the underside of the foot. And so I want to pull the needle all the way through, and so those stitches are on the cord, and this is where the magic loop portion comes in. And it just makes it easier when you go to pick up the next row if you don't have a needle already in there tugging on those stitches. So it makes it a little bit looser and a little bit easier for you to pick up that second row. So you don't want to pick up the row directly below where you just picked up stitches, which is the one that the stitch marker is on. You want to go one row below the stitch marker. So in between these two rows that you are picking up, you have one row that is not picked up, and that is going to be where we eventually cut our yarn. So it's really easy to get a little bit off track with this or to accidentally start going in a diagonal. I've definitely done that before. So my biggest piece of advice is just to take it slow. Rip it back out if you need to. We obviously haven't cut into anything yet, so if you need to pull your needles out and redo it 3 or 4 times, then no harm, no foul. So just make sure that you have picked up half of the amount of stitches that you originally cast on for your sock. So for example, I cast on 60 stitches, I want to pick up 30. If you are knitting a 56 stitch sock, then obviously, what is that, 28? I can't math. The idea is you just want to make sure that you have half of your stitches picked up in 2 rows on the back of the foot. If you had looked closely before when I was picking up stitches, you'll notice I was picking up the left side of the V stitches, and you'll see a bit later that that resulted in a lot of my stitches being twisted when I went to knit them when I started on the heel. So if you do not want to have to worry about twisted stitches, you'll want to pick up the right side of the V, and that is something that I can never ever remember when I sit down to do this for the life of me. So I just have figured out how to untwist my stitches or to watch out for that. But just a quick heads up, guys, if you don't want to have to deal with that, pick up the right side of the V stitches, and then you should be on your needles orientated in the direction that you want to be. So here you can see again this close-up, I've picked up that left side of the V, and I should have picked up the right. But in my opinion, as long as you're getting all your stitches picked up and you haven't missed any, then you're going to be good to go. You can always worry about flipping those around when the time comes, and you'll probably see me doing that in this video. So again, just make sure that you're picking up an even amount. You want to start the pickups at the same spot in the column and end in the same spot. So we don't want to have a weird jog when we go to cut into our foot. So here I'm just using the end of one of those needles and I'm grabbing one of the stitches that is in that middle row, and that is the one we are going to cut. So here it goes, close your eyes. Snip. And that's all there is to it. It's terrifying the first time, but I promise you guys, the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll become. And again, since we have those stitches picked up, should anything go awry, we are going to be able to fix it and do some sock surgery. So you'll see me here, I stuck my hand on the inside of the sock, and then I'm using that needle tip to just go in and start picking out the stitches from that middle where I've snipped. And you can see here that my yarn did get a bit splitty on me. That probably happened when I went to pick up stitches. I probably ended up splitting the yarn a bit. So again, my advice is just to take it slow, and if you need to kind of work out some splitty yarn, then definitely just go ahead and do what you need to do. This is not a race. There's no need to go fast. Especially the first couple times, you're going to want to take things really slow because you will be nervous. I was definitely nervous, but I promise it will all be okay. So just continue to pick out that row of stitches that is in between your the row on the cord, and I pick the stitches until I have a couple stitches left. I don't go all the way to the end anymore. I can't remember if that's in Kirby Wirby's video or if I figured that out later somewhere, but it does result in a bit tighter corner or tighter join when you start knitting your heel, and it leaves no gaps, so you will have a gapless heel on the sides if you leave a couple extra stitches in there and you don't pick them all out. So apologies, I did not think this through very well. I am using white yarn for this, which is not showing up the best on camera, and it is incredibly difficult to film yourself doing this, let me tell you. But again, I keep mentioning Kirby Wirby. Go check out her video. I'll link it down below in the description box. But she has a beautiful video where you can follow along, and that's essentially all that I am doing. So definitely check that out. So I made it to the one side, but also leaving just a couple stitches left in that middle row. So then I flipped it around and now I'm just going and pulling the yarn from the other side. And again, splitty yarn. It happens, take it slow. And speaking of the yarn, this beautiful yarn is from Christina, who is the Cozy Knitter, and this was her January 2017 sock club, and it is the Woodland Realm colorway, and it is just the most beautiful self-striping yarn. I'm a huge fan of hers, and I was just so excited when I got to pull this from stash and make a beautiful pair of socks out of it. So I'm sorry, Christina, that I cut into your yarn, but I promise in the end it's all worth it. So here, hopefully, there we go. Hopefully you can see that the couple stitches on the right and left that I left in there, and now you have a ginormous hole in your sock. Congratulations. Like I said, it's terrifying at first, but I promise it all works itself out in the end. So once you have your hole cut and all your stitches picked, you can go ahead and fold it on itself so we can get ready to add in the yarn that we're using for our heel. And this is just going to be a standard toe decrease, so if you're used to knitting top-down socks, for example, this is the same idea for the toe decrease. So Christina was so generous in her sock club and included a matching mini, so that's what I am using here in the beautiful brown color that will hopefully be a little bit easier to read on camera. But we just want to go ahead and magic loop into that first stitch. And again, the first couple stitches are going to be a little bit tight, which is fine. That's what we want. We want it to be a little snug because that's how we know that we're going to have that gapless join. So just again, take it slow, and I promise once you get a couple rounds in, it will become much easier. And you can see here that I'm knitting into the back of the loop. That is because, like I mentioned earlier, I picked up the wrong side of the stitches. If I were to knit in the front side, I would have ended up with twisted stitches, and I didn't want that. So since I am just knitting all the way across all of those picked up stitches, I went ahead and sped this up for you so I don't put you guys to sleep. So just magic loop. I made it all the way to the other side, turned it around, and now I am knitting in the round across the other side of the picked up stitches. So now that I have all of the stitches picked up, we are just going to work this like you would a normal decrease for your toe. So the first stitch, once you have your 2 setup rounds ready to go, you knit the first stitch, and then you want to slip, slip, knit the next 2 stitches. So we're decreasing, and then you just knit across until you have 3 stitches left on the needle, and we're going to knit those 2 together and then knit the last one separately. And you have just decreased 2 times across this heel. So there's my 1, 2, 3. I'm going to knit those 2 together. And like I said, it's snug. The first couple rounds are going to be snug, so I'm sorry I went off camera just a little bit, but I was really trying to get into those couple stitches. So then we turn and magic loop, and we go back across the next side in the exact same way. So knit 1, slip, slip, knit, and then knit all the way across until we knit 2 together to decrease the other side. And you just carry on in that same pattern. However, in between each one, you're going to want to knit all for 1 round, and then the next round you do your decreases again. And I will put all of that below in the description box for you guys. It is, like I mentioned before, just a standard toe decrease, and that's all we are wanting to do here. But I'll definitely list it down below if you guys want to take a peek at that. So in order to not bore you guys to tears, I went ahead and finished all those decrease rows off camera. And here's what I have. I continued that until I had 14 stitches left on both needles. And that is completely up to you. You can do 14, you can do 16. I usually decrease down to 14 when I am knitting my toes, so when I do top-down socks, so that is just kind of the number I stick with, and I know that it leaves enough room for my heel in there, so that's just my go-to. So once we have decreased all the way down, I do one last knit all row, And then I can get ready to go ahead and clip my yarn and get ready to Kitchener. When I Kitchener, my toes closed or my heels closed, I skip that first setup round that they have you do. I found that it kind of gets rid of the little dog ear look that you can get sometimes. So that is why you'll see me just going in straight for the knit one off, purl one on, purl one off, knit one on, and I just continue in that fashion. And you can see here that I clearly got confused and had a momentary lapse in brain fartness and could not remember that I was supposed to purl off, knit on for that second needle. So you can watch me fumble as I'm like, wait a second, that's not right. My muscle memory is telling me otherwise. So then I'm like, oh, let's do this again. And then I went ahead and tried to knit it again. And then the light bulb came on and I was like, there we go. Thank you, muscle memory. Does anyone else feel like the Kitchener is super fumbly, or is it just me? I've done it a million times and I feel like each time I'm just a hot mess. But in the end, it's so beautiful. So here we have our finished heel, and I just went ahead and wove in that extra on the inside of the heel. And there we have it. So this is what it looks like when it's all done. And you can see that there are no gaps in that heel join. Everything is lined up beautifully. And it's just a fantastic heel. I highly recommend it. No need for waste yarn. And you can put it in wherever you want. So if you're doing Christmas gifts, for example, and you may not know how big of a sock you need, it's a perfect way to kind of go back and add that in at the last minute. So that is all I have for you guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. I know it's been a long time coming, and I promise I'm going to do more heel tutorials coming soon. I just have to get one of my numerous sock whips to a point where I can sit down and record my process. So if you guys found the video interesting, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified when I post new tutorials or my weekly podcast. Definitely comment down below if you have other tips and tricks for an afterthought heel, if you found this helpful at all, if you have projects on Ravelry that you want to share with me. I would absolutely adore to see any and all things from you guys. So happy knitting, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.